Uh, welcome to this second FinTech Lab talk to all of the FinTech Lab community around the world. I am very happy to make this second program right now in English with some special friend, Mikel. Well, I'm going to be a very introduction of Mikel. Michael is he helped increase blockchain adoption through trust and security, and he's an advisor in early stage crypto startups in the most valuable builder program. As well, he helped to bring more value to clients. He started a network working group where professionals from every corner of crypto can connect and collaborate. Also, he has a podcast called Network Spoiled to showcase some of their talent and abilities. Welcome, Michael. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Dennis. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you very much to join us to our community today. We are very interesting to learn about cybersecurity. As you know, this year have a special. It was a special year because there were a lot of issues in cybersecurity and in Web3 ecosystem around the world. So today we're going to talk about cybersecurity and what was the most important hacks in the Web3 ecosystem, and how do you see all of this operational risk management in Web3 startups and projects. So welcome, Michael, and it's time for you to ask.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dennis, and thank you to the community for tuning in. So, just a quick overview about what's happening in the cybersecurity space. Cybersecurity, it's not the most interesting topic for a lot of people, but it's one of the most important topics, right? Everyone wants to focus on the innovation, right? That's where all the imagination, the creativity that happens. But all of those things have a dark side, unfortunately, and that sometimes makes the news, right? So, in the case of the bridges like the Wormhole Bridge, the Ronin Bridge, Nomad Bridge, Wintermute, BNB Bridge, all these bridges that have had an exploit this past year. I mean, the bridges continue to be the number one concern right now from a cybersecurity standpoint. And so year to date, we have lost close to 3 billion. To be honest with you, I lost track because some of you may know there's been some additional exploit that occurred, a really big one tonight, potentially. We'll have to see what the news comes out to be. But in the month of October, we've lost 290 million, roughly. So obviously, security continues to be top of mind, and for anybody that is coming into the space that's looking to build something substantial, something long term, they have to make security a top priority.
Well, very interesting. Very interesting. This first part of the conversation, Michael. Some people heard about the last Binance problem in the cybersecurity. Can you tell us a little bit about how Binance have this problem in the cybersecurity the last couple of weeks, and how they solve the problem in the space?
Yeah, I don't have all the details when it comes to the BNB Bridge hack. I can tell you that there was about 568 million that was originally hacked, but I want to say the hacker didn't leave with all 568. And there were some things that the Binance Bridge did in order to minimize the damage, which also rose some concerns from the community, from centralized versus decentralized manner, right? If you truly are decentralized, and how can you make certain authoritative decisions? So, that's a topic for a different conversation. But what I can say in general, for a lot of these exploits that are happening on bridges, a lot of them are happening because there's not that many nodes. And so when you have a successful phishing attack, you can easily compromise a network when you don't have that many nodes to rely on. So in order to avoid these exploits, you need to have sufficient amount of nodes, validators, essentially. And then there's always the human error piece, right? So you have a coding glitches that can occur. So in a case of some of the exploits, um, it allows a hacker to potentially set up a fraudulent signature, which gives him permissions for specific privileged functions. And, based on those functions, you can mint additional NFTs, or, whatever the case may be. So it's still a work in progress, from a security standpoint. And there's ways to avoid these exploits. Although, they're popping up very often, you can still find ways to avoid them. Like, for instance, increasing the validator numbers. You can get audited, right? So you can audit not just the smart contracts, but also perform penetration testing. Because at the end of the day, Web3 is built on top of Web2. So you can't just take care of the top layer. You have to make sure that you take care of the front end. You have to make sure that you take care of the back end, and that the full end-to-end scope is secure. And then after you completed that audit, you can do some additional things. You can perform bug bounties, provide rewards for people to be able to find specific exploits. You can continuously monitor the deployed contracts, because when you perform an audit, that's just a snapshot in time. And so as time goes on, additional vulnerabilities, additional exploits can occur. And so if you're monitoring those smart contracts that you have deployed, you have a better chance of minimizing any kind of damage.
Interesting, very interesting. All of these topics and all of the things that projects do to improve their security. Um, and now let's talk about the companies, the business, the institutional companies. How is there any framework in the cybersecurity space in Web3 which companies use to implement operational risk management in their business?
I think it's a work in progress, and I think that right now, just recently, there were really big news from the institutional world. JP Morgan successfully executed a cross-border transaction using the blockchain. That's a very good first step. When you see a big bank perform this type of transaction using the Polygon chain and the smart contract code for Aave, this is really big news. It's just not as big because it's happening right now during the quote unquote bear market, right? But this shows that, this successful transaction is showing that we have the guardrails in place to be able to perform these types of transactions on the blockchain. And so, personally, I think that the future is bright, but there needs to be a little bit more clarity from a regulatory standpoint. And there are certain bills that are being proposed right now, around stable coins. And that is also probably a topic for a different day. But all in all, I think right now, with the regulations, it's not that a lot of these institutions are sitting on the sidelines. They're putting the things in motion. It's just there's a lot more to lose there, and so they are just being very careful about how they are entering the space. But what we saw here in the last couple of days or so with JP Morgan making big headlines, I think this is going to open up doors for other institutions.
Wow, incredible! Wow, incredible how financial industry is growing fast in US, and all of this with all of these regulations to moving all of the industry to innovation and financial inclusion.
Dennis, not to interrupt, sorry, but I just want to say, I mean, it really shows also the importance of what you're doing in terms of helping these institutions tokenize their assets, because that's exactly what they're going to be needing in order to perform these types of transactions. So I think if anything, it just shows the importance of what you're doing.
Wow. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much for this comment. In terms of that, how do you see the region? I mean, Latin America and, for example, Colombia, Mexico, Argentina, Chile. How do you see the blockchain industry, and how companies and stakeholders in Latin America is moving to approve to go with all of this blockchain technology to make real business cases to their clients?
Yeah, I think that I live in North America, right? And in North America, the regulatory environment looks a little different than from South America, than Asia, Europe, and so on. But I think specifically in South America, one of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of adoption when it comes to cryptocurrency is the fact that there are some countries there that have really bad inflation issues. And so when people are looking for other forms of being able to make payments, if there's some likelihood that they may not be able to get access to their funds at a bank, this is why you have a lot of crypto ATMs and machines to help people make some alternative ways of gaining their money and be able to make payments. So I think that from a regulatory standpoint, from an adoption standpoint, that South America is very much aggressive when it comes to that.
Sure, sure. In terms of how people secure their tokens, what kind of wallet do you recommend to people who start to use crypto and to start to interact with smart contracts in any services? For example, like us, for escrow services, and for people who start to use their wallets to interact with some escrow services. What is the most secure way to interact with smart contracts for users?
Well, when it comes to wallets, there's a lot of different options, Dennis. So you have options that are on one side of the spectrum where they're very centralized but very user friendly. Like, for instance, using an exchange, right? You could use Coinbase, for instance, and you can leave your funds there if you really wanted to. For those that are more concerned about, maintaining their own keys, you can look at a cold storage wallet. That's on the other side of the spectrum, where you have, say, a Ledger Nano X. You hold your own crypto. It's your keys, it's your wallet, it's your crypto, and you don't have to worry about anybody taking that, right? So you have two sides of the spectrum there, and then somewhere in the middle, you have wallets like your MetaMask or your Phantom wallet, and there's a lot of new wallets that are popping up, and some are more decentralized than others. There's still a little bit more risk involved there. Because it's technically what they call a hot wallet. But ultimately, I think it depends on what the level of comfort is. I think the level of comfort is more important in this particular case, because if somebody tries to use a cold storage wallet and they've never even touched crypto before, you'll probably have a lot more risk involved with the lack of your expertise than, say, an exchange, going under. Not to say that it can't happen; it certainly can, but ultimately it depends on your level of comfort, and then you can make the best decision for yourself once you feel like you're at a place where you understand what your options are.
Okay, okay, thank you for explaining us all of these different options to some people who maybe in the audience is starting to use their wallets. They don't know how to use it. They feel nervous because they maybe could feel that they could lose their crypto. And thank you very much for the very clear explanation. The other questions where communities is asking a lot and want to know, um, for the for some solutions in Web3, what is the typical mistakes where builders do when they give a service to users in terms of when you do the or when companies do the security audit services? Like, what is the typical mistake that the developers or builders do when they give a service to users or to companies?
Yeah, so I could tell you, for me personally, working in the industry, one of the biggest risks that I found last year has been around centralization. And what does that mean? Well, it really, there's three things that are involved with centralization risks. That is not having a time lock, not having a multi-signature wallet, and not renouncing your privileges to a more decentralized community, like say a DAO. So that's the most common quote unquote risk. For a lot of these projects that conduct these, that go through these audits, some of them make changes. They may change their wallet. They may, implement these functions. The last one that I mentioned tends to be the most difficult because sometimes this is just part of the nature of the business model that they have. They don't want to renounce those privileges because they want to be in control for, let's say, who gets rewarded, for certain types of actions. But if you think about it, that's technically a centralized risk because you have, certain parties that have all of these capabilities, right? And so if you truly want to become fully decentralized, then the third part has to take place as well, where you renounce your privileges. But that was last year. It would be interesting to see by the end of this year what are the most common findings. It remains to be seen. So I'll keep you posted on that.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. And for those who wants to know more about cybersecurity and operational risk management and the hacks, what reference do you recommend to people who want to read more about these topics and these kind of things about cybersecurity, data protection, privacy, and all of these things?
Yeah, these days it's nice that we have access to YouTube. So watching specific YouTube videos, you can follow specific Twitter accounts. So, for example, I follow the forgot the name. It's one of the CertiK Twitter accounts where they will CertiK alerts where they provide the different exploits that occur. Now, that's more in real time. If you want to know like up to the minute what's happening, if you want to read about it, then more than likely, if it's a large enough of an exploit, there will be some articles online, whether it be CoinDesk or other sites that will report on specific exploits. A lot of times, these bridges that get exploited because they're just so massive that there's usually information about it. And there most likely will be an article about tonight's exploit as well. So we'll have to see what that says.
Wow, thank you, thank you. Very interesting how easy we can find information about this topic, cybersecurity and risk management, and how companies is growing on these topics. And one of the last questions who people is asked about is what was the big issue that you could cover it in in the last year? What was the big problem that you heard about the company was and have to solve to continue the service and to don't shut off the service to the users? What was the big problem in this year for you and your ecosystem, where clients or group clients or companies or crypto startups have, and what they solve this issue to keep giving their service to their users?
So, Dennis, if I'm understanding your question correctly, you're asking what type of exploit that occurred that
Yeah,
was a big challenge,
yeah,
and I had to go in and essentially solve a
yeah,
problem for it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there, there's quite a few, and uh, one of them is pretty big, and I don't want to name any names because I'm
Uh-huh.
not supposed to yet. But
Uh-huh.
what I will say is that I'm fortunate that I have a lot of great resources that are in my disposal, a
Uh-huh.
lot of great engineers that I work with, and a lot of them are very much alert about what's happening in the space. So whenever there is an exploit, usually um, that specific project will get an alert from us.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
then I would also get educated on what that exploit is. And then I would approach that project and I would say, hey, look, this is what happened. This is what we need to do to solve it. Let's work together on this. And a lot of times that type of approach is very refreshing for projects because they're in the middle of a crisis situation, and you come along and you help them. That to them is a great way to build a trusting relationship. And then from there, we work on what that exploit is, we solve for that problem, and how can we prevent it? What are some of the measures that we can take to avoid those situations in the future? So the type of exploits range from a lot of money being lost to only a little bit, but large or small, for every project, that's hard-earned money, right? And so we certainly try to do our best to help everybody involved.
Wow, wow, incredible! All of this experience, strong experience that you have in with these years, with a lot of different cases and different situations with clients and with the ecosystem. Thank you very much, Michael, for this conversation on our FinTech Black Talk, where we want to give content, a very important content and knowledge to our community, and not only in Europe, in US, but also in Latin America, and Ibero-America, and this kind of countries where we are working with our ecosystem. Thank you very much for your time, for the opportunity to listen to you from Atlanta to Latin America. Maybe do you want to say some final words to all of us on this night?
Absolutely. Yeah. The community, the people in South America, their enthusiasm for what's happening in Web3, it's extraordinary. It's inspiring. I come across a lot of different projects that are building from, Latin America. We just had a big conference in Colombia, which was really nice and refreshing to see. So, my hat's off to the people in South America. And whenever I come to visit, I'll be back. It's always a pleasure to to come visit. It's great people, very curious people, very vibrant people, and it really makes the space a lot better because of them.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael, and hope to see you again, maybe in the coming month, and all of you and are in the community. So if anybody have another question, you can community can find you on our chat and Telegram channel. Thank you very much for your time, and hope to see you soon in the next weeks.
Absolutely, Dennis. Thank you for your
Okay.
time as well.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye now.